Hi everyone, this is Kalyan Kumar and welcome once again to Chemistry Universe. And in the last video, I had talked about an empirical relationship that had been established between the absolute configuration of a molecule in terms of R and S and the optical rotation. Now, this is, as I said, is not a very important part of this lesson, but it is something that if you are interested in, you should watch. I'm sure nobody's ever going to ask you any question in any exam for that matter, because this is just an empirical relationship between the absolute configuration and the prediction of the direction of rotation of the plane polarized light. Now, going further, there have been relationships which have been established even to the extent where people have tried to estimate the amount of optical rotation. Now, in principle, we've already said in the beginning that there is no correlation between the absolute configuration and optical activity in terms of rotation. You cannot predict whether it is dextro or levo. You cannot predict what angle by which it will rotate. But people have looked at experimental data and tried to figure out a rule. And I'm just going to present to you a very tiny bit of that rule just to give you a sample, a taste of what that rule is all about. Of course, it involves even more complexities than what I am actually going to go through. So let's get on with the show. This is part 8B of the isomerism series. Brewster had devised an empirical correlation using sodium D-line for rotation of plane polarized light of a molecule with its absolute configuration. He suggested that a center of optical activity can be described as a screw pattern of electron polarizability. Now, what this basically means is that if you look at a chiral carbon, and let's look at the most simplistic one where you have one single chiral carbon, and assume it behaves like a screw. You know, when you try to fix in a screw, the right hand screw, it will, as you move it clockwise, it will get into the hole. And if you want to unscrew it, you have to rotate it anti-clockwise. So it's a screw pattern rotating clockwise. So he said if you were to arrange groups on a chiral carbon based on their electron polarizing power like a screw pattern, you will be able to figure out to some extent the direction of optical activity. Patterns in which the groups are arranged in such a way that we go clockwise in going from the most polarizing to least polarizing groups are dextrorotatory, while those that go anti-clockwise are levorotatory. So what this means? Well, exactly what it says. If you go from most polarizing group, and when I say polarizing, I'll tell you how those polarizing values are calculated, but in general, you can assume this polarizing power is similar to the polarizing power that you study in Fajan's rules. The ability of a group to push the electrons towards the other group, or the ability of this group to allow its electron cloud to be polarized. So if we go clockwise from left to right, in growing from the most polarizing to the least polarizing, the molecule tends to be dextrorotatory. And which also sort of implies that there has to be some relationship between these polarizing power of these groups with optical activity. And if you do so anti-clockwise, it will be levorotatory. Polarizabilities are based on the refractions of atoms or groups that make up the pattern. So this is some particular experiment based on which these have been calculated. The polarizabilities of groups are also influenced by conformational changes in the groups. So for the sake of simplicity, we will ignore complex groups and focus only on simple groups or single atoms attached to the asymmetric carbon. As I said, this stuff is pretty complicated. It's very mathematical also. So it seems that there are two factors that affect the plane polarized light being rotated by a particular direction and by a particular angle. And one is the polarizing ability of the groups. And second is also conformation of a complex group. So at different conformations, it tends to behave in different polarizing abilities. So now that being very complicated and not in the scope of our league, and we don't even have to even look at this that I'm doing right now, but this is only to create a little bit of interest in understanding how things work out. So it is essential to understand that we are going to ignore all conformational effects. In fact, conformational effects are in fact stronger than the polarizing effects. But for the time being, we'll ignore that. And we'll only look at groups based on their polarizing abilities. And I'm going to give you a list of such groups based on which you can sort of figure out in which direction the plane polarized light is going to be rotated. The decreasing order of polarizability of some atoms and groups are I, Br, SH, Cl, and the phenyl group is same as COH, and greater than Me, greater than NH2, greater than OH, greater than H, greater than D, greater than F. And as can be expected, we do know that iodine is more easily polarizable than bromine. Bromine is more polarizable than chlorine. Chlorine is more polarizable than fluorine. So this is some sort of, I would say, an experimental observation of polarizing abilities. And this is the order. Now, obviously, I've not included all the groups in this. It's not easy to do that. That's why I said I'm going to look at simple groups, preferably single atoms attached to these groups. So now let's use this and try to figure out the rotation of the plane polarized light of certain molecules. And let's check how they are supposed to be arranged. If the groups were arranged in the following manner in their Fisher projection, meaning this, where groups A, B, C, D are such that their polarizabilities are A greater than B greater than C greater than D, then the molecule will be dextrorotatory, which means if I go from A to B, B to C, C to D, can you see this is clockwise? Now remember, we are not giving any R and S right now. If of course, if the groups were arranged this way and if it comes out to be R, it's great. But right now I'm not going into R and S. I'm just looking at the fact that if the groups were arranged like this, where the polarizing abilities of A, B, C, D are in this order, the molecule will automatically be dextrorotatory. If the groups were arranged in this manner, where you go A to B, B to C, C to D, it is anti-clockwise, then the molecule will be levorotatory. So based on this, let's check just one molecule. Let us consider the optical rotation of R2-phenyl ethyl chloride, which will be this. And if you can check its configuration, it's going to be R. Now, if you look at the list of Cl, pH, Me and H, let's go back. So we had Cl. So our group was Cl here, pH here, Me here, and H here. Okay. Now Cl is A, highest polarizing, then pH, B, then after pH you have Me here, C, and H is at the end. So can you see A to B, C to D clockwise? And if you were to check its optical activity, the molecule is dextrorotatory. And if it were arranged anti-clockwise, it would have been levorotatory. So this was just to give you an idea about how people have gone to the extent of deciding and predicting the direction of plane polarized light rotation based on the absolute configuration. So this is just an idea for that. And in fact, there has been a table that was created to tell you the effect of each group in terms of quantity. Quantitative effects have also been explained. And there have been tables where people have predicted the optical activity of a molecule and correlated that with the experimental findings, and they are very, very close. So, but I'm not going into that detail right now. So with that, we come to the end of this additional video on optical activity. In the next video, part 9, we will be looking at what happens to a molecule when there is more than one chiral center. So with that, this is Kalyan Kumar signing off. Have a great day. Goodbye and thank you for watching this.